When it comes to music production, you can tell the level of a producer by the way the producer use an EQ, because 3 different producers can use the very same EQ, use it to EQ the same sounds, but they will use the EQ differently. Let's say one is an beginner, another one is a intermediate, therefore the third one is an expert/pro. These people will use the EQ differently. You can just tell that this one is a beginner, intermediate, or pro producer. So without further ado, let me make a quick beat for me to demonstrate with it so that you can see what I'm talking about, because a beginner producer sometimes might know what to EQ, but he might EQ the sounds differently from an intermediate producer and a pro producer. If you are a beginner, you're no longer going to EQ sounds like a beginner, you're just gonna EQ sounds like a pro producer. Let me make some melodies. Let me take my tempo to maybe something like 70. I'm gonna make a trap beat, even though I can make different types of beats, but today let me demonstrate using a trap beat. Okay, let's say we have that type of melody. Let me quickly add a kick. Yeah, this kick, and also an 808, because I wanna show you guys how to EQ different sounds, because you EQ different sounds differently. Understand me? You do not just, sometimes you on a bass you have to boost the high end, therefore on the snare maybe you have to boost the low end. Something is missing, maybe hi-hats. Yeah, something like this. Yes, an open hat. Therefore the kick and the bass on top of each other. Therefore the hi-hats, remember I'm using half tempo, that is why my hi-hats look like this. Okay, let us send everything to the mixer. We're just gonna highlight everything, therefore go to our mixer. In the mixer, select an empty channel and press Ctrl+Shift+L to send everything to the mixer. Ctrl+L is used to only send everything to one mixer channel, but if you wanna spread everything to its own mixer, you have to press Ctrl+Shift+L. Okay, after sending everything to the mixer, let us start EQing. We're gonna start with the melody. This is how a beginner producer will EQ melodies. Therefore, the beginner producer will leave it like that, very quick. Understand me? Which is not wrong, but you can take it to another level. Let me reset it. Therefore, an intermediate producer might shape it like this, because sometimes you have to cut off sounds that you don't want in a smooth way or in a sharp way. In a sharp way, sometimes is applied on things like 808 or bass. But because this is a melody, you have to shape it like this way, not this way, because this is a melody. We have to shape it in a smooth way. Therefore, on the higher end, you might shape it in a sharp way. Therefore, an intermediate producer might leave it like that, but let me show you how an expert might EQ sounds. Before removing the high end or the low end, an expert producer will first find sounds that he don't like or frequencies that he don't like by shaping it this way. You can hear that frequency is too loud and muddy, therefore you have to remove it. If you are using headsets or high quality speakers, you can hear the sounds that I'm picking up. You have to remove this one also. You have to remove this one also. Okay, after removing the sounds that you don't want, sometimes you might have to load a second EQ to remove the low end and the high end by shaping it the way an intermediate producer might shape it. You see that sometimes an intermediate producer might skip this stage of EQing. He might just skip it to this stage. Therefore, after shaping it this way, remember on the intermediate level we never boosted any frequencies. Sometimes on the melody you have to boost the high end so that your melody is sounding full. Remember the reason why we remove some of the high end, because we're gonna fill up the high end with an 808 so that our sounds will never clash. Understand me? Then it sound muddy. This way it is gonna sound clean. Therefore, when it comes to EQing a kick, this is how a beginner producer will EQ a kick. The reason why sometimes you don't have to use presets, because I think there's a kick preset. No, sometimes you have to EQ the sounds using your ears, because your ears will never lie to you. This preset was not made using this kick. It was made using a certain kick, and certain different sounds occupy different frequencies. Understand me? That is why sometimes you don't have to use presets when it comes to mixing. Therefore, a beginner producer will leave the kick on this stage. Let me show you how an intermediate producer will EQ a kick. So most of them, they use this preset, which is shaping sounds this way. You see, an intermediate producer might also remove some of the higher end because you don't really need frequencies above 20 Hz to 30 Hz. It is depending on the sound. You see, remember, a beginner producer might not remove some of the highs, but an expert will shape the sound this way, will shape an EQ this way and also this way. Remember that preset that we used, it doesn't let you boost the sounds this way, it just let you remove the highs and the lows. That is why you will be able to differentiate between a beginner, an intermediate and a pro. You see, on the left hand side, on the lows, we use a sharp shape this way. Therefore, on the highs, you have to make it smooth so that you don't cut off certain frequencies that you need. You might also boost some of the highs. On the kick, it is not really necessary to remove certain frequencies like we did on the melodies. And a quick tip, you have to add a soft clipper on your kick to make sure that it doesn't clip or it doesn't go above 0 here. Let me switch it off. Let me expand my mixer. I have switched off the soft clipper. You can now check we are going above 0 here, which is something that you don't want because you need the headroom. Therefore, I turn on the soft clipper. You can see we are slightly above 0. You can just turn it down around 90%. You can check here. You can hear it is still sounding punchy, but we have turned down the volume a little bit. Okay, let us move to the 808. When it comes to EQing the 808, a beginner producer might EQ this way. And leave it that way. Therefore, an intermediate producer might use that preset. You can hear by just slowly putting it here, it starts sounding punchy. I don't know why, but when you cut off your 808 around 30 Hz, those are those frequencies that I talked about that you don't need them. It just start sounding punchy. It doesn't matter if it's an 808 or a bass sound, it just start sounding punchy. Therefore, this way he might make it smoother. But usually a intermediate producer might leave it like this. Like I said, sometimes you have to make it sharp, sometimes you have to make it smooth, depending on the sound and the type of melody, kick 808 snare. It depends. This is an expert level, but we're not gonna use that preset. We have to make our own preset. We have to make it sharp and turn it up and put it around. You see, you can use this knob. You can use this knob to move around, or you can just double click here and put it around 30 Hz and cut off the low in a smooth way, because the highs, cut off the highs in a smooth way, because this is an 808. You don't have to remove everything, you just have to smoother everything. And also my boost, by shaping it this way. You do not just boost it, you have to shape it so that you don't really boost everything. You have to search for frequencies that you like. What I'm hearing is that we have to boost here and also this side, but you don't have to boost too much. You can hear it is sounding punchy. Let us move to our next sound, which is a snare. Load and EQ. This is how a beginner will EQ a snare. And because a beginner see that even on this section our snare is hitting, he will think you don't really have to remove some of the frequencies here. You can see it is filled up, but the intermediate producer might use your favorite preset, which is the 20 Hz 18 Hz cut. This side you cut off your lows and also some of the highs, but not too much, just a little bit, so that you leave space for the high heads and the open heads. You can hear that I have cut off the sounds, but the frequencies, but it is still sounding clean. Therefore, an expert, remember, expert, they do not really rely on presets. They tend to make their own presets. Remember, on the 808, on the left hand side, or in the highs, the lows, we were using a sharp cutoff, but on the snare you have to use a smooth cutoff on your left hand side. Therefore, a sharp cutoff on your right hand side, which is the highs. Remember, this is a expert level. You also have to boost some of the highs. You can hear this is the juice. This is what we want. Therefore, you boost a little bit and shape it. Therefore, let us go to our hi-hats. You see, we have certain frequencies that we don't want in the lows. A beginner will just cut them out and leave it like that, but the intermediate will use your favorite preset, which is a preset that I used for a long time before I understand that sometimes you have to shape your own presets. Do not always rely on presets. Just imagine you use this type of shape. You see we have empty space here that you will not take out, and you have to take out this space because you see it is just empty. It is just gonna make your mix muddy unnecessarily so. Therefore, an expert, remember, experts make their own presets. Will shape it this way in accordance to the sound, not relying on presets. You see we have cut off everything in accordance to the way our sound is shaped. Just a little bit, something like this, not too much. You see something around 16,000 hertz. Therefore, boost some of the frequencies. You can hear it is sounding all right. Okay, let us go to the open head. I just picked this sounds, melody, kick, 808 or bass, snare, hi-hats, open heads, because these are the sounds that are used in all different genres on this earth, because I can produce about 5 different genres, so I knew which sounds to pick. Understand me? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We are still in it. This is how a beginner will EQ open heads. You see on the low we have certain frequencies that are occupied, but you don't really need them. Therefore a beginner will just leave it that way. Therefore this is how an intermediate will EQ a open head. Remember, you have to cut off everything around 16,000 hertz, or sometimes around, let me just say around 15,000 hertz to around 18,000 hertz, depending on the sound. You see it is the same story on the head. On the hi-hat we have a certain empty space that an intermediate producer might not remove, and it is gonna make your mix muddy. You see, therefore an expert or pro producer will make his own preset and cut off everything he don't want and boost something that he want. That is an expert for you. You shape it this way. And also remove the 15,000 hertz to 18,000 hertz depending on the sound. You have to make it sharp this way. You are cut off. Therefore this side you can make it not smooth, not harsh, but a little bit smoother, halfway smooth, by putting it on 2 dots here, not the one of 1 dot or not the one of 4 to 3 dots. You can put it around 2 dots here. You see our cutoff, it is shaped in accordance to our open head. Therefore you have to boost some of the frequencies. Like I say always guys in my tutorials, you have to trust your ears. Your ears are the most important tool. You don't have to rely on these theories telling you you have to boost certain frequencies on certain sounds. Remember, there are no rules in music. You have to always trust your ears and do what sound okay. There is no point of following rules, but at the end of the mix, you do not like what you have produced. You understand me? Because you did not trust your ears and relied on these theories that are not true. Therefore, this is what we have at the end. Remember, on your melody, you have to add maybe 2 EQs. You have to add 2 EQs, the one for removing unwanted frequencies. This is also applied on mixer of mixing vocals. On the vocals, you also have to remove some of the frequencies that you don't like, and another EQ for shaping your sound this way. Therefore, we go to the kick. Remember, on the kick, you have to add an EQ and also a soft clipper. This is usually the only 2 plugins that I add on my kick. But if the kick doesn't sound okay, I might add something like transient processor, which is a FL Studio stock plugin. I'm gonna make a video on how to mix your kick. Please stay tuned. Therefore, on the bass or 808, you have to get something like this, whereby you remove sounds and boost some of the frequencies. Therefore, on the snare or clap, you have to have something like this, whereby on the low you make it smooth and sharp on the higher end. Therefore, you boost some of the highs on your clap or snare, or maybe rim. Snare, clap and rim are mixed the same way usually. Therefore, 808 and bass are mixed the same way usually. Therefore, hi-hats and open hats or cymbals are mixed the same way usually. Let me show you our hi-hat EQ versus our open hat EQ. Let me open our open hat EQ. You will see they are almost similar. You can see they are similar, but not really similar because they are not the same, so you have to produce them individually. If you wanna know how to EQ vocals and sound professional, check the video that is gonna pop up in your screen. Don't forget to subscribe. I know it was a long video, but I had to, so that you don't sound robotic. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video. I'm out.